visiting resident teachers at Dawn Mountain. And we are live as well as broadcasting from Houston, Texas. Today is Sunday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. We are talking about the four boundless states as they're taught in the Buddhist tradition. They're also found, interestingly enough, in the Hindu tradition. If you look in the Yoga Sutras, the four boundless states are mentioned there. And so it's hard to know where they began, where they were existing, but it's clear that they were part of the tradition of teachings. In India. And we've talked a little bit about the teachings on equanimity. And equanimity is taught first as a kind of precursor. So that we understand that when we're cultivating love and we're cultivating compassion, we're cultivating joy in others' success, we are doing that evenly. We're doing it with equanimity. We're doing it with an attitude that includes friends, neutrals, and enemies. So we're dealing with love, and we're teaching this in the modern West, and it seems that what's very, very important for us in the modern West is really being able to accept and love ourselves as a beginning. The tradition actually includes love of self as the starting point, even in the traditional Buddhist teachings on love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. But I don't know that it's emphasized enough, given what I've experienced growing up in the West and given what I've experienced as a teacher working with students in the modern West. We have a lot of cultural pressures on us, whether it's the way we bring up our children in the modern era, the way we're all subject to time pressures in the modern era, the way that urban living has fractured traditional familial structures and societal structures. We are in a bit of a pickle, if truth be told, being modern individuals and living in the modern world. There can be a lot of isolation, there can be a lot of disconnection, and often the way that reverberates is that people are not at ease with themselves. And that not at ease can include levels of self-deprecation, self-hatred, self-not liking, self-disappointment. So a big question is, what can we do to alter that course of events? And there's actually quite a bit we can do. I was thinking about what particular angle to bring up this morning in terms of practice and Buddhist teachings. You know, we teach a lot of mindfulness nowadays, and I am, for good or ill, old enough to know of a time when the word mindfulness did not exist in modern Western culture, when there was not a book on a shelf in a store about mindfulness. And I sort of know some of the key players who got it all going. So mindfulness has been moved into our culture as a kind of mental health intervention. And it's a very, very good mental health intervention. It's a good mental health intervention for a certain range of issues. It provides a certain amount of ability for people to slow down and make some choices in their lives. So when we practice mindfulness, as we will at 11, it's a skill that we're learning and attention that gives us the capacity when things arise to allow our attention to make some choices. Well, do we want to go along with some kind of emotional reaction, or are we seeing we're having an emotional reaction and we're maybe electing to at least withdraw from a situation or quiet down, take care of ourselves. It's a great skill to have, very, very important in terms of our own emotional well-being. What can get lost with that kind of emphasis is that there are other qualities associated with practice of mindfulness. Dan Siegel, who is a neuropsychologist, neuropsychiatrist, neurologist, neuroscientist, affective neuroscientist, he's got a lot of different titles, writes quite a bit nowadays about mindfulness. And he points out that the way the brain works, when we see a flower, there are two competing streams of attention that are occurring. There are apparently 6 layers to the cortex, and the sensory layer is sort of from the bottom, and that information is going up. And the top layers are kind of the more verbal, cognitive, ordinary mind kinds of layers of the cortex. If we haven't meditated, if we haven't practiced any kind of mindfulness meditation, when we see a rose, what's typically going to happen is we're going to have a higher cortical response of a rose, kind of another rose, implicit, like all the million other roses I've ever seen. And we go into a kind of shorthand where we just kind of click off, there's a rose, know what a rose is, and we really are operating on pretty minimal information about what that specific rose is. That's a very, very highly functional way to deal with a rose. It's a very, very highly functional way to deal with people. Oh, here's another Houstonian. Here's somebody who lives in the Heights. You know, all of these conceptual markers that we attach to everything. Here's white bread, whatever that means to us. Here's whole wheat bread, whatever that means to us. I mean, there are all sorts of associations and meanings that go onto these cognitive packages. But cognition is not affect. It's not feeling. Cognition doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have a lot of texture. If we tend to be very, very cognitive people and we're faced with decisions, one of the things that can occur with highly cognitive individuals is they'll make lists of plus and minus, but if they're not tuned into their emotions, they might have 5 reasons here, 4 and 5 reasons here against, and can't figure out which way to go because it's just words, it's just concepts. It doesn't feel like anything. So mindfulness comes at a different level. We're working with our sensations and our emotions, and those are the lower layers of the cortex, and those can create what are called bottom-up processing. And so if you're practicing mindfulness of the breathing, you can even say cultivating love for oneself, we'll do a little bit of this in a second, can be a certain kind of mindfulness. We are slowing everything down, and we're bringing a different focus to things. The famous Jewish theologian named Martin Buber, he wrote a book called I and Thou, and he distinguished between I-it relationships and I-thou relationships. And I-it relationships are instrumental relationships. I'm working with you because you're an engineer and I have an engineering problem and you're going to be an instrument of solving my problem. I need an accountant, so I hire an accountant. I need somebody to feel good, and you're the person I feel good with, so we're going to go to a movie together. You know, everything has got a kind of program here, and now it's going to be in my phone, and I've got my 10 minutes of meditation, and I've got my cushion, and I've got a goal, and at least I'm going to sit 10 minutes. And so it can permeate everything. And I-thou is much more open, it's more poetic, it's more romantic, it's open to all of the possibilities, all of the richness of life, all of the ups and downs and the unpredictabilities. And we can have even, Buber may not have liked this perspective, but I'm going there. We can have an I-thou relationship with ourselves, which is much more accepting, more open, more flexible, more curious. So one of the things that I think that is a detriment in the current way that mindfulness is often taught, maybe not always, is that a spiritual perspective is left out. And what would I mean by spiritual? And that would be something that is aware of a richer, more mysterious, maybe more ultimate, maybe timeless, maybe even spaceless aspects of what existence can be about. And I have an acronym. I've actually got 2, but I'm only going to talk about one, of what we can bring to our practice of mindfulness. And even when we do it with respect to, let's say, cultivating love, or even cultivating the breath, when we do that at 11. And the acronym is FACT, which stands for fresh, accepting, curious, tender, and sensitive. FACT. And so when we're cultivating some kind of practice of meditation, we want it to be fresh. We want it to be accepting. We want it to be aware of whatever our experience is. We want to be curious towards ourselves. So many of us are not curious towards ourselves. We have this I-it relationship to ourselves. You know, I have to wake up. I've got to go running. I've got to get on this diet now. Curiosity is, I have some feeling. I wonder what it's about. I have some tension. I wonder what it's about. I'm feeling warm and fuzzy towards someone. I'm just going to let myself feel that. Tenderness tenderness is kind of the, I think, essence of love. And if we can, in our attention towards ourselves, be tender, it's very, very sweet. And it involves slowing down, involves acceptance, the A in fact. And then this S in fact is sensitive. When we're trying to get something done, we're typically not sensitive. We have that goal in mind and we're going to chug, chug, chug over anything in our way. And if we don't have to eat lunch, we're not going to eat lunch. We can be insensitive to ourselves. We might be insensitive to others. We're all that way. I mean, it's nobody who's free of these kinds of issues. But we can bring facts, the attitude and the values of facts, which to me embody that kind of I, thou, openness, freshness, acceptance, curious, tender and sensitive. You know, it's the kind of proverbial Japanese person looking at a cherry blossom and just taking it in and soaking it in, or an aesthetic person looking at a painting, or a musician really taking in a musical piece fully. You know, the aesthetic sensibility is filled with facts as an attitude. So what if we do that with respect to just cultivating an attitude of love towards ourselves? And I'll just walk us through a very, very simple guided imagery, just starting with ourselves. Ultimately, love is cultivated for all beings, but the first step will be just towards ourselves. And so just be comfortable and be aware of what you're feeling in your body, whether it be tension or comfort. And can you just be, aware of contact with your seat and support of your spine and support of your inner central channel. And it may be easy or it may not be easy, but just see what happens if you make the gentle aspiration for yourself. May I be at ease. May I be at ease. May I be at ease. May I be peaceful. Just see what comes up. Maybe you're screaming inside, maybe you're peaceful. Can you be accepting and curious? May I be at ease. May I be happy. See what happens when you just very gently make the aspiration. May I be happy. May I be happy. May I live my life rich in meaning and centered in purpose. May I live my life rich in meaning and centered in purpose. May I be blessed to see the challenge of my adversity May I be blessed to see the challenge of my adversity. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. May I be happy. May I be happy. You're just taking whatever calm benevolence we may have in this moment, can we generalize it to, just in a simple way, all beings? May all beings be happy. See what is actually occurring in your experience. May all beings be happy. And then just be with your own experience. And don't be doing any work whatsoever. Just let your experience be. Just be in being. Maybe your mind is racing, maybe emotions are coming up, maybe there are conversations, maybe there aren't. Just let yourself be for one more minute. Let your experience be. So we'll take a few minute break and see if our meditators arrive at 11.